crazy, psycho, dramatic, fake, attention-seeking are all some of the stigmas that are thrown at people suffering with mental illness every day. Recently, a lot of awareness has been raised, but still there's a huge stigma that stands in our society. After trying to take a more educated look at mental illness and what it really is and what it means to struggle with it, I hope that you'll start to approach it more like a physical illness and with a more open mind, judgment-free, and most importantly, stigma-free. The official journal of the World Psychiatric Association put it perfectly. They said many people with serious mental illnesses are challenged doubly. On one hand, they struggle with the symptoms and disabilities that result from the disease itself. On the other hand, they are challenged by the stereotypes and prejudice that result from misconceptions about mental illness. And this not only decreases their quality of life, but once you start to throw judgments, then they start to take it internally and turn those judgments on themselves. And then before you know it, they've created a stigma for themselves, which makes it hard for them to want to seek out recovery, seek out treatment when they don't want to be labeled as something that they're not. So I want you to imagine a few scenarios. Can you imagine walking into a room of people and suddenly your body starts shaking? It's been related to a heart attack. You're dizzy, chest pain, can't breathe, can't speak, and can't stand. And most importantly, you can't make it go away. What about feeling like you're moving in slow motion every day? What about feeling like you can't get out of bed, you're not worth anything, you don't have hope to continue living? How about a reoccurring impulse that you know is irrational, but you can't stop and people say to just get over it or that you're crazy? All of these are very real symptoms, according to the National Alliance of Mental Illness, of anxiety, depression, and obsessive compulsive disorder, which are just a few of the mental illnesses that people struggle with every day. The solution is nothing less than more education and more awareness for what it really means. Huffington Post magazine recently put out an article by Sarah Lund on the misuse of the word crazy in our society and how many times it can add to our stigma of mental illness. Imagine if those who were struggling didn't have to worry about being labeled, being worried about what other people would think, or being thought less of if they were honest and sought out treatment. They could seek help and self-acceptance just a little bit faster and make their fight just a little bit easier. NAMI says that 1 in 5 people will experience a mental illness at some point in their life and in some form. And then 1 in 25 of people will live with it for a lifetime, and it will be something that they always struggle with. And when it comes to the leading causes of death between people of ages 10 and 24, that is suicide is number 3. And 90% of those people had a mental illness underlying their suicide choice. So being educated and judgment-free could maybe help one of those people feel like they had somewhere to go without this huge burden being put on the people around them or on their life. In the New York Times, there was an article about a woman who helped her daughter recover from a very, very serious eating disorder. And she was able to go on and live fully and happily because of her mother's love and judgment-free acceptance. So if we could all do that to the people around us, no matter what they're struggling with, we could save those that don't think that there's any hope left. To achieve this, I'm asking you to first be aware that those around you could be struggling. I know things like anxiety or an eating disorder may not always present themselves in the most obvious way up front, but American Psychiatric Association says that even the most serious of mental illnesses rarely come out of the blue. So there's some form of emotional change or behavior change that comes ahead of it, and if we can just be aware of the people around us that could be struggling and be ready to help them in a judgment-free way, that could save them from a really serious emotional battle. And I'm asking you to also just hold the same sensitivity and compassion in your heart for serious mental illness, just like you do for serious physical illness. It is just as hard to fight and sometimes just as deadly. So I'm asking you, lastly, to just open your hearts and open your minds and break the stigma.